Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. I never thought I'd find myself in this position. Standing in the dim light of our living room, I watched Christine through the window, her silhouette framed against the streetlights, laughing too freely with someone I didn't know. The chill in the air crept into my bones, but it was the gnawing suspicion in my gut that chilled me most. It wasn't just the late-night outings. Those had grown more frequent over the last few months. It was the way she dressed now, the skin-tight dresses and daring necklines that had replaced her comfortable sweaters and jeans. Something was wrong, and I could feel it in my bones. When she finally walked through the door, the scent of her perfume filled the room, sweet and cloying, mingling with the whiskey from the glass I had just poured myself. I took a sip, trying to steady my nerves, but the alcohol did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. "You're home late," I said, trying to keep my tone light, but I knew I was failing. The tension hung between us like a noose, ready to snap. She shrugged off my comment, her smile a little too bright, as if it was rehearsed. "Just grabbed a drink with some colleagues," she said, her eyes flicking away from mine. I set the glass down on the table with a thud, the sound echoing in the stillness. "This is getting out of hand, Christine. You've been doing this a lot lately." "Who exactly are you with? What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning innocence. "It's just a night out, just a night out," I repeated, disbelief dripping from my voice. "You've come home at 3 in the morning twice this week. You're dressing like you're trying to impress someone else." Her expression shifted then, irritation flickering before her mask of calm returned. "Why are you making this a big deal?" "It's nothing, really, nothing. I deserve to know what's happening, Christine. You're acting like a stranger." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought I saw something slip through, guilt, perhaps, or fear, but it vanished too quickly to grasp. "You're being ridiculous." "I'm just having fun." "Fun? Is that what you call it?" My heart raced as I pushed. "Because it feels like you're hiding something from me. Just tell me the truth." There was a long silence, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could see her jaw tighten, and then, as if the dam had broken, she said it. "I'm seeing John, okay? He's a coworker." It just happened. The admission hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the air leave my lungs as I stumbled backward, grappling with the reality of her words. "John. Your coworker. You've been sleeping with him." The shock twisted my stomach into knots, and I could barely process it. "Mitchell, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice rising defensively. "It just happened, and I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Not what I think," I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've shattered our marriage, Christine. How could you do this to me?" She crossed her arms, her defensiveness turning to coldness. "You don't get to act like the victim here. You've been so wrapped up in your work." I felt alone. I didn't want to feel like that anymore. The betrayal sliced deeper than I thought possible. "So, you thought cheating was the answer?" "I didn't plan for it." "I'm sorry, Mitchell," she said, her tone softening, but it only fueled my anger further. "Sorry doesn't cut it. 5 years of marriage and you throw it all away for some thrill. You didn't even have the decency to end it before moving on." Her face hardened. "You're being dramatic. I've made my choices. You need to accept that." With that, she turned her back on me, leaving me standing in the ruins of our life together. I watched as she walked away, the echo of her footsteps fading into the darkness. My heart felt like it was breaking, and I was left grappling with a betrayal that felt surreal, as if it were happening to someone else. I sank onto the couch, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. 5 years of memories crashed around me, and I felt the bitterness settle in. I had never felt so alone, and I knew that everything had changed in that one moment. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The finality of it washed over me like a cold wave, leaving me shivering in the wake of my shattered trust. The weeks that followed were a blur of anger and betrayal. I couldn't sleep. Every night, I lay awake, my mind racing, replaying Christine's confession like a broken record. The more I thought about it, the more my pain morphed into a burning desire for revenge. I was tired of feeling powerless. I needed a plan, a way to turn the tables and reclaim my dignity. I met Lawrence at our usual bar, a dimly lit place with worn leather booths and a jukebox playing classic rock. The familiar scent of hops and pretzels wrapped around me as I slid into the booth across from him. He raised an eyebrow as I poured my heart out. "I can't believe she did this to me, Lawrence." 5 years of my life tossed aside like it meant nothing, I said, my fists clenched. "Betrayal cuts deep, man. But you can't just sit back and let her get away with it," he replied, leaning forward, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" "I want her to feel what I felt. I want to dismantle her life," I said, the words spilling out like a rush of adrenaline. Lawrence's expression shifted, the wheels in his mind turning. "You're serious? You want revenge?" "Absolutely. She thinks she can just walk away from our marriage without consequences," I shot back. "It's not just about her affair with John, it's everything she's done." "All right then," he said, a smile creeping onto his face. "Let's make a plan." We spent the next hour brainstorming. I needed evidence of Christine's affair, something concrete that would shatter her carefully constructed narrative. "You need to hire a private investigator," Lawrence suggested, rubbing his chin. "Someone who can track her movements, get the proof you need." The idea felt empowering. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search. "Here's a firm that specializes in infidelity cases. They have great reviews," I said, showing him the screen. "Do it. And while you're at it, get a good divorce lawyer," he added. "You want someone who can help you come out on top. Who do you recommend?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "There's a woman named Elma. She's known for her ruthless tactics and won't hesitate to go for the jugular. You'll need that if you want to fight back." A week later, I found myself sitting in Elma's sleek office, the walls adorned with abstract art and the scent of fresh coffee in the air. She was a striking woman in her 40s, dressed in a sharp blazer that commanded respect. "Tell me why you're here," she said, her voice cool and professional. "I want a divorce, and I want to make sure it's as painful for her as it was for me," I said, my voice steady despite the turbulence in my chest. Elma raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "You want revenge?" "Yes," I replied, feeling the fire inside me reignite. "She cheated on me, and I want to dismantle her life. I want her to know the consequences of her actions." "Revenge is a strong motivator," she said, a sly smile creeping onto her face. "Let's make sure she never forgets your name. I can help you gather evidence and make her regret this." As we discussed the details of my case, I could feel the pieces falling into place. I was finally taking control of my life, and it felt exhilarating. We laid out a strategy. Elma would begin gathering evidence for the divorce while I worked with the private investigator Lawrence recommended. That night, I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer the victim, I was the one orchestrating the outcome. I called Lawrence to update him. "Met with Elma today. She's as ruthless as you said," I told him, pacing my living room. "She's on board." "Good. You have to be smart about this," he replied. "Make sure you gather as much evidence as possible, and don't rush. You want to hit her where it hurts." "I will," I assured him, determination surging through me. "She's going to regret what she did." As the days turned into weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I watched Christine from the shadows, documenting her late-night outings and the suspicious phone calls she took outside. The private investigator was meticulous, gathering photographs and evidence that would leave no doubt about her betrayal. Each time I received a report, a thrill of power coursed through me. I was gathering the ammunition I needed for the final confrontation. The satisfaction of watching her life begin to crumble around her fueled my resolve. I was no longer just a man heartbroken, I was a man on a mission. And as the plan unfolded, I could feel the walls closing in on Christine, tightening around her as I prepared to execute my revenge. The weeks rolled by in a blur of anticipation and dark satisfaction as I executed my plan. Each day, I slipped deeper into my role as the puppet master, orchestrating Christine's downfall from the shadows. The private investigator I hired, Sam, was relentless. He delivered regular updates, each one fueling my growing resolve. One evening, I met Sam at a cafe, a quiet spot tucked away from the prying eyes of our lives. He slid into the booth across from me, his expression serious. "I have some solid evidence on Christine and John," he said, pulling out a folder filled with photographs. I leaned in, adrenaline coursing through my veins as he spread the images across the table. "These are from last Saturday." They were seen leaving a bar together, laughing and clearly too close for comfort. I stared at the photos, each one a dagger twisting deeper into my heart. How could she do this? I muttered under my breath, anger boiling beneath the surface. "People do crazy things when they think they're invincible," Sam replied, his voice steady. "But this evidence will be invaluable in court. You're building a solid case." As I flipped through the images, I felt a rush of vindication. "Good. Let's keep this going," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "I want to take things a step further." "Like how?" Sam asked, raising an eyebrow. "I need to make sure she knows she's not going to get away with this," I replied, my mind racing. "Let's start leaking some rumors at her workplace." The following week, I set my plan into motion. I went to her office under the guise of dropping off lunch. I strolled through the hallways, nodding at familiar faces, but my mind was racing with thoughts of how to execute my next move. I casually bumped into Melissa, a coworker who had always been friendly. "Hey, Melissa. Have you heard about Christine?" I asked, my tone casual, masking the venom beneath. "What do you mean?" she replied, tilting her head. "I just heard she's been spending a lot of time with John lately. You know, after hours and all that. Seems a bit unprofessional, don't you think?" I let the words hang in the air, watching for her reaction. Her eyes widened in surprise. "I hadn't heard anything about that. I thought they were just friends." "Yeah, just friends," I said, letting out a dry chuckle. "That's what they always say, right?" As the rumor spread, I noticed a shift in the office dynamics. Christine's colleagues began to look at her differently, whispering behind her back. It was exhilarating to witness the effect of my subtle sabotage. She had painted herself as the victim, but I was determined to ensure everyone knew the truth. Later that week, I received another update from Sam. "I managed to catch Christine and John having dinner at that Italian place downtown," he said, sliding more photographs across the table. "They were there for hours." I couldn't help but smirk at the images. "Perfect. We need to escalate this." I called Lawrence, eager to share my progress. "I've been leaking rumors at Christine's office. It's working, she's already starting to feel the pressure." "Good," Lawrence said, a hint of pride in his voice. "But you need to hit her harder. Have you thought about telling her parents?" I hesitated, feeling a flicker of doubt. "Do you think that's too far?" "Too far. She's already shattered your life, Mitchell. She deserves to face the music. Trust me, it'll be a blow she won't see coming." With Lawrence's words echoing in my mind, I decided to reach out to Christine's parents. I crafted a message that was careful yet direct. "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. I hope you're well. I wanted to talk to you about something important regarding Christine. She's been making some choices lately that might concern you." When I finally spoke with them, the disappointment in their voices was palpable. "What are you saying, Mitchell?" "What choices?" her father asked, confusion and anger merging. "Christine is involved with John, and it's more than just a casual thing. I thought you should know." The silence on the other end was deafening, and I could almost feel the weight of my words sinking in. "This isn't easy for us to hear," her mother finally said, her voice shaky. "We need to talk to her about this." "Please do. She needs to be held accountable for her actions," I replied, satisfaction curling my lips. As I hung up the phone, I felt a rush of power. The dominoes were falling, and soon Christine would be left standing alone. I was determined to push her further into isolation, to make sure she understood the full weight of her betrayal. Weeks passed, and Christine's world began to crumble. She was increasingly distant, her interactions with colleagues strained as whispers of her infidelity circulated. I relished the moments I caught sight of her, the way her shoulders slumped as she walked through the door, burdened by the weight of her choices. And then I got the call. Sam had more evidence. I caught them together again, this time at his house, he said, excitement in his voice. I have the photos to prove it. Send them to me, I said, my heart racing. This was it, the final nail in the coffin. As I received the images, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. I was no longer just a heartbroken husband, I was a man reclaiming his life, one calculated move at a time. The thrill of revenge coursed through me, and I knew that soon enough, Christine would face the consequences of her choices in a way she had never anticipated. The day of the divorce trial arrived, a culmination of weeks of strategizing and executing my plan for revenge. I stood outside the courthouse, the imposing stone structure looming above me. Inside, I would finally confront Christine and the fallout of her choices. A mixture of anxiety and anticipation churned in my stomach, but I was resolute. I had gathered enough evidence to ensure I walked away with the upper hand. As I entered the courtroom, I spotted Christine seated at the plaintiff's table, her demeanor frazzled and pale. Her once confident facade was gone, replaced by a nervous energy that buzzed in the air. I took my seat, my heart pounding, but I felt a sense of calm wash over me as I reminded myself of the evidence I held. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Elma stood beside me, her presence a steady anchor. She exuded confidence as she addressed the judge and presented our case. Your Honor, we have compelling evidence that proves Ms. Johnson's infidelity and disregard for the marriage. I watched as she laid out the photographs and documents Sam had collected, each one meticulously organized. Christine's expression shifted from defiance to shock, her eyes widening as she absorbed the weight of the evidence being presented against her. Objection. Christine's lawyer interjected, clearly rattled. This evidence is circumstantial at best. Circumstantial. Hardly, Elma shot back, her voice sharp. We have documented instances of her relationship with Mr. Williams that extend far beyond mere speculation. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as Christine's facade crumbled further. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Proceed, he said, motioning for Elma to continue. Elma turned to me, and I nodded, feeling the adrenaline surge. Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. Mitchell Johnson to the stand. As I took the stand, the weight of the moment settled on my shoulders. I met Christine's gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and desperation. This is it, I thought, steeling myself for the confrontation. Mr. Johnson, Elma began, can you describe your marriage with Ms. Johnson prior to her affair? It was built on trust and love, I said, my voice steady. But over time, I noticed her becoming more distant. She started going out late, wearing clothes that didn't reflect the woman I married. I glanced at Christine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw vulnerability beneath her anger. And what was your reaction when you discovered her affair? Elma prompted. I was heartbroken, I replied, my voice firm. But I realized that I wasn't going to let her walk away without facing the consequences of her actions. Christine's lawyer stood up. Mr. Johnson, is it possible that your perception of events is biased due to your emotional state? I shot him a glare. No, it's not. I have evidence that proves she chose to betray our marriage. With that, Elma presented more photographs, each one a silent accusation. I felt the tension in the room rise as Christine's lawyer struggled to counter the evidence. The judge listened intently, and I could see the realization dawning on Christine's face. At last, I turned to Christine, my heart racing. You thought you could get away with this, didn't you? You thought I wouldn't fight back. Her expression hardened, but I could see the fear creeping in. You think this is all my fault? You had your own issues, she snapped, her voice rising. This isn't about me. It's about your choices, I said, my tone unwavering. You shattered our marriage, and now you have to face the reality of your actions. As the trial progressed, Christine's defenses began to crumble. I watched as her bravado faded, replaced by despair. The judge ultimately ruled in my favor, granting me not only the divorce but also a substantial settlement. As we left the courtroom, Christine lingered at the door, her expression a mix of anger and regret. You've really gone through with this, haven't you? She said, her voice trembling. Every step of the way, I replied, feeling a sense of finality. You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. With that, I walked away, the weight of my heartache finally lifting. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity restored. In the weeks that followed, the aftermath of the trial echoed in both our lives. Christine struggled to adjust, her reputation tarnished and her relationship strained. I received messages from her former colleagues, some sympathetic, others gleeful at her downfall. It felt surreal to witness her unraveling from a distance, but I knew I had done what I needed to do. One evening, as I sat with Lawrence at the bar, I reflected on everything that had happened. It feels strange, I admitted, swirling my drink. I thought revenge would make me feel better, but now, I just feel relieved. Maybe that's the point, Lawrence replied, a knowing smile on his face. You took control of your life, and now you can move forward without the weight of her betrayal. As I contemplated my future, I realized that the pain of the past would always linger, but it wouldn't define me. I began to explore new opportunities, traveling, taking up hobbies I had neglected, and even considering dating again. Christine, on the other hand, faded into the background of my life. I heard from mutual friends that she was struggling to find her footing, her relationship with John crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. I felt a pang of empathy but quickly brushed it aside. She had made her choices, and now she had to face the music alone. In the end, I found strength in my journey. I had navigated the storm of betrayal and emerged on the other side, ready to embrace a new beginning. The pain had transformed into resilience, and as I looked toward the horizon, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The future was mine to shape, and I intended to make it count.